The Allied breakthrough on September 17th eventually created a corridor all the way to Nijmegen. As a result, the sector of the German 1st Parachute Army was split in two. Field Marshal Model redressed this situation by allocating the sector east of the corridor to Students 1st Parachute Army, while the sector west of the corridor would be commanded by the arriving 15th Army. Model also identified Veghel as the weak point in the corridor to Arnhem, and on September 21st he ordered a counterattack from both sides to cut off the Allied supply line by capturing the bridge of Veghel. The regular German infantry divisions didn't have a lot of striking power, and as a result, Battlegroup Schiel was brought in with von der Heydte's Fallschirmjäger to give the attack on September 24th the necessary punch. Unfortunately for the paratroopers, no trucks were available, and they had to conduct two exhausting night marches to get to the assembly area at Boxtel. The 6th Parachute Regiment was transferred without a 2nd Battalion, which was detached during the march, but it was strengthened with the attachment of Parachute Battalion Finzel, which we saw earlier in the battle for Beringen. Von der Heydte was not impressed by Finzel's outfit, which he described as having low fighting qualities and poor discipline. Finzel's battalion was however reassigned to Battlegroup Dreyer before the attack. This sudden loss might be the key to the formation of the regiment's 4th Battalion, which appeared on the roster for the first time on September 24th. The 6th Parachute Regiment was expected to be the vanguard of the attack, and von der Heydte wanted to make sure he had a reserve force at hand for a follow-up attack to guarantee success. The goal was cutting the single supply route on which Montgomery had banked his entire operation to get over the Rhine in one jump. The British corridor was however so narrow at some points that it became under German attack, and as a result it soon got the nickname Hell's Highway. It was up to the 6th Parachute Regiment to form the vanguard of the attack to cut the British corridor to Arnhem. The plan of attack was as follows. With the support of a platoon of Jagdpanther, the 6th Parachute Regiment would attack the road up to the bridge and destroy the bridge. It would be supported by battalions Oehler, Finzel and Jungwirth, which would take care of some diversion. Von der Heydte was also promised that an armored brigade would attack from the east in order to put pressure on American lines. Opposite the 6th Parachute Regiment were the American paratroopers of the 501st Parachute Regiment, one of the 3 parachute regiments of the 101st Airborne Division. This regiment had fought against the 6th Parachute Regiment in Normandy in June 1944, with the latter in the defense. The Americans had suffered heavy losses in the process. Now the Americans would be on the defensive, and they deployed their battalions in a semicircular position for optimal defense, using the sand dunes at Eerde as a natural barrier. The German attack kicked off after 8:30, after more than a half-hour delay, because the units of the 6th Parachute Regiment were still gradually arriving from the exhausting night march on foot. Only 2 battalions made it to the start line, and that was not the last setback that morning. The 1st Battalion lost its way during the attack, and as a result stumbled into the sector of the 3rd Battalion. This meant that the impact of the attack was significantly weakened. Nevertheless, both battalions managed to reach the sand dunes and throw the Americans largely out. The Americans managed to hold on to Eerde, where they received support from British tanks, in a bid to throw the Germans out of the sand dunes. But the attacking tanks got knocked out in quick succession by the supporting Jagdpanther, and by 11 o'clock both parties were in a deadlock. The situation changed just after noon, when the Americans conducted a counterattack with A Company of 1st Battalion and managed to partly drive the Germans back. Von der Heydte was frustrated about the American resistance, which seemed to be unrelenting, and the fact that the attack from the east did not relieve any pressure on his units. At 1 o'clock he decided to break off the attack and let his men dig in. His attack seemed stranded, and it was questionable whether he could deliver on the hopes the High Command had put on his unit. There was, however, an unintended consequence of his attack. The American 501st Parachute Regiment had contracted its positions as a result of the attack of the 6th Parachute Regiment, and this created a gap between this regiment and the 502nd in the south. Battalion Jungwirth, which was supposed to support the 6th Regiment, quickly exploited the gap in the afternoon and cut off Hell's Highway before the Americans could intercept them. Von der Heydte did not hesitate for one moment and sent the 9th and 10th companies of his 3rd Battalion to bolster the position of Jungwirth plus his detachment of Jagdpanther. They had the good fortune of the cover of the Lichtenberg forest to dig in. The proverbial green devils of the Fallschirmjäger had bested the American paratroopers and hid in the woods to ambush the British supply columns. Soon enough, British trucks were blazing and the Germans even managed to capture 2 British tanks. The attack of the Fallschirmjäger on September 24 had put the whole success of Operation Market Garden in serious danger by blocking the only Allied supply route towards the north. This was recognized by Hitler, who openly dreamt of cutting off and defeat all Allied forces north of Veghel. The American paratroopers were responsible for this sector and were determined to use all the available forces to remove their German counterparts from the corridor. A battalion of the 502nd Parachute Regiment would attack from the south, while the 506th Parachute Regiment would hammer the Germans from the north. Both pincers would be supported by British tank squadrons from both sides. On the 25th of September, the Allied forces moved in, and by the end of the day, the Germans were practically surrounded in the Lichtenberg forest. Although the German position was precarious, they managed to retreat under the cover of night, taking the Jagdpanther with them. Ironically, as the German paratroopers were retreating from the road to Arnhem, the British paratroopers were retreating from the north bank of the Rhine that same evening, abandoning their bridgehead and with it any illusion to reach Arnhem, the end goal of Operation Market Garden. Dutch historian Jack Didden is convinced that the attack by the 6th Parachute Regiment and the subsequent blocking of the road by the Fallschirmjäger on September 24th were decisive in derailing Operation Market Garden. Without a secure supply route, there would be no thought of securing a bridgehead over the Rhine, according to him. There were, of course, many factors in the failure of Operation Market Garden, but by the end of September, the men of von der Heydte were increasingly proving themselves to be a real headache for the British. From now on, the regiment would be sent whenever there was a crisis and would prove itself an invaluable asset to the German army in the Netherlands.